Okay, awesome. Welcome those of you who are out in our virtual world. Here's your, you're walking. So what, are you a student here at Montgomery?
No, I was in Castle Park.
Castle Park, I used to work there. Awesome.
Really?
Yeah, so when you are going into class, do your teachers welcome you? Do they do any activities like this where you get to know each other or others in the classroom? No? Okay. So I'm going to challenge you to go to your teachers and ask them if they could do that. Because if we can, I don't know about you, but I grew up as a very shy person. My friends right now don't believe me, but it would help me to break that ice and feel part of a school community if someone could just know who I am, what my name is, and just find out something about me. And it gives a way for us to connect with each other and find out, you know, what we have in common. In the district, we've been doing well-being work. We've been through a pretty tough last few years, right? And so a lot of my job as a school psychologist in the district is to work on what we call crisis response. And with crisis response, we have to get to a point where we have physical safety and a perception of physical safety. And we haven't had that yet, right, with the pandemic. And right before the pandemic, we actually had another pandemic that we don't maybe acknowledge, and that was a mental health pandemic worldwide. So we have two back-to-back pandemics. And I don't know about you, but our life has changed dramatically, right? We've had a lot of loss. Our loss has been the loss of how life used to be, maybe loss of loved ones, loss of income, loss of connection, right? And so we're just starting to kind of come back out. And so a lot of the well-being work is to be able to lean into that and just see each other and acknowledge the human being. So many times people talk about, you can have a seat, it's okay. You can help us out here. There we go. So we, instead of responding to crisis and you're having your physical safety, once you feel safe, then we can deal with the psychological safety. We've had to do both right now, and it's really hard to navigate that. So we keep talking about self-care. You know, what do you do daily to take care of yourself? And it became this negative thing, like, I don't have time for that. Life is too busy. And so we looked at what's called well-being. So as human beings, we have to be well, right? And if we're not well, we can't function. And it's not just about our mental health, but it's about all of well-being. And we're going to get into the definition a little bit. So what we look at, would someone be willing to read this for us about the definition of well-being?
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Well-being is about the combination of our love for what we do each day, the quality of our relationships, the security of our finances, the vibrancy of our physical health, and the pride we take in what we have contributed to our communities.
Awesome, thank you. So what resonates with you? What kind of comes out of this definition for you? And is this what you would typically think as well-being? And I apologize, we have the wrong presentation, so I'm just going to wing it from here.
It almost sounds like community relations and self-care, maybe?
Yeah, so it's more than just us, but it's our whole community as well, right? So when we see well-being, it's a matter of a continuum. And so every day, all of us could be very well and not so well, right? That could change hour to hour, day to day, right? And when we hear the word mental health, oftentimes we're thinking someone who has a mental illness. But all of us are times where we're not doing so great, times we're doing well. So it occurs on a continuum. So someone could have a mental health diagnosis like depression, and they could be having a really tough time and not come out of the house, or they could have it managed through some of the strategies that they're using. So just because you have a mental health diagnosis doesn't mean that there's this negative connotation. There's days you're going to do great and days you might not do so great, and that's for each one of us. Next slide. So it might be we just need to stop, pause, and breathe, right? We have all these resources, materials we try to push out to students and to staff, but I don't know about you, but a lot of people are just feeling overwhelmed. Like we have so many resources, but sometimes all I can do, I don't know about you, but do you feel like sometimes you're just careening through life and you just need to stop and just take a breath like I had to do just now with the stress of my PowerPoint? So this is something that we've gotten out to everyone. Next slide. Just, there's nothing else you can do, because what we know is breathing actually brings in oxygen into our brain and helps calm our whole neural system. So next slide. Next slide. So as a district, I've been charged with really leaning into our well-being work. I originally started responding to crises, staff or students dying, and just doing psychological triage. But I'm like, this is not enough. We have to do something to build each one of us. So when we come up to a crisis, how many of you have had a difficult or crisis situation in your life, right? And so what happens is we pull from what did I do before? Had I had this experience before? Or if I'm having a tough time,
It's okay.
You guys, I present nationally to thousands of people and I've never had this happen, so I appreciate your grace and patience with me. So this is my crisis for today. But it's been really neat that the district is really leaning into, it's not business as usual. And when we talk about education, it's not just about what you're learning in a book, but it's also what you're learning about yourself and about each other and being able to develop your own resiliency. So we created a framework. And is anyone familiar with Strength Finders from Gallup? There's the principal, Mr. Zumstein from here, is doing a lot of that work. He was at Montgomery Middle, not here. And it's really finding out your strengths and who you are and how you show up. And then they also have a well-being finder. And I'm going to go through that a little bit with you. We created a well-being center for our staff. We have a lot of staff who are really struggling. I myself work at the district office now, and I've had to go out and be a substitute teacher because we've had so many people out or we've had positions not filled. Talk about stress, right? And we have bus drivers. We're short bus drivers right now. So we know of anyone who's looking for a job, we're looking for bus drivers. But we needed a center where we could help folks just come together and learn strategies to take care of their well-being. We've been working with a lot of community partners. We have something right now, the California Healthy Kids Survey, the CHKS. Students, have any of you heard of the California Healthy Kids Survey? So right now, you should be getting an email from your school site asking you to complete this survey. It's so important right now. We usually give it every 2 years. We're giving it every year for the next 5 years. So we can hear from parents, how are we doing as a district? Are we including you? Are we partnering with you? Are we providing what you need and your child needs? The students take it at 7th, 9th, and 11th. We also have teachers because we really need to see where are we at and what do we need to be doing? What do we need to be doing differently? We also have well-being ambassadors at the district office where we can have someone who can bring back information from the Wellbeing Center or tell us, hey, what's happening in that department and what do we need to do to provide support? And that could be classes, it could be resources, it could be coaching or just coming in and doing facilitated circle. So this is the Strength Finders. It's from Gallup, and they also have Wellbeing Finders. And they identified 5 areas of well-being. One is purpose and career. Someone who is unemployed, that crisis is more impactful than any other major factor that could happen in life. Financial well-being, social well-being, physical well-being, and community. Next one. And then Kaiser added emotional well-being. So these are the 6 pillars that we are using in the district to really define well-being. Because some people might think, oh, it's working out every day, or it's drinking water, or now this looks a little bit different from well-being, right? Being able to be part of a community, that sense of connection. Next slide. It's also not just about the person being well, but the organization. So we're working on promoting healthy environments. So something as simple as greeting people at the door, doing a little check-in, we call it a grounding activity or welcoming activity. Then at the end of a meeting or the end of a class, what did I learn out of this? Or what is one thing I'm going to take away from my learning today? Or what is something I feel positive about that I'm going to go do after today? Next one. So one of the things we created during COVID was a virtual wellness room. And how many have seen this? Okay. So what it is, I am not a tech person, as you just saw today, and someone taught me how to create a website. This is a website that students, parents, and staff can go to. There's hotline resources all in one place. We're creating a wellness plan, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. What apps are available, like the Calm app, different apps that can help you with your own well-being. There's nutrition, so it's just different resources or YouTube videos or materials. Maybe you want to learn how to do some healthy cooking. They could have recipes in there. So it's a one-stop shopping for all the different areas of well-being. Next slide. So the student well-being plan is something I created. And again, I'm not a technology person, but we use something called Jamboard. And it's a way that two people can interact and be able to do Post-its and do planning together. And I had a student I've been working with that she had attempted suicide twice. And here she is, I've never seen her. She's, behind her screen, right? And she's at home during distant learning. And yet I'm like, how do I connect with someone? So she did turn on her camera once for me. And she created this with me. So we talk about our well-being. We created a well-being plan that every individual, parents, students, and staff can do. So first identifying what are things I do every day to take care of myself. What we know is sleep and water are the most critical things to start your body just maintaining your well-being. And then going to what are my strengths? So the strength finders. If I can find something positive about myself, you're going to do what we call growth mindset. If you start at what I can do, I don't know about you, but sometimes I look at what I do wrong, right? I wish I could have done that differently. But when someone's having a struggle, if they can really look at where they are in their strengths and be able to motivate themselves every day with that, it's a good place to start. But there's going to be days I'm not doing so hot. And so we talk about safe coping strategies, internal and external. Typically, students will say, I'll listen to music, which is something I love to do. It helps calm my system. Some people might journal. Some people might go take a walk. The biggest thing that helps all of us, because we are human beings, is being in nature. So if you're in the office or in the classroom and you're having maybe an anxiety attack, just going outside in nature and seeing and feeling like the wind, the sun, and maybe the trees and plants or animals, all of that neurologically balance our whole system. I have a new puppy, so that's been my safe coping strategy. But being able to take that, and I'm going to give you a list today, and expand your toolkit of safe coping strategies, it's going to help you when something new comes up that you're struggling with and you're not sure where to go. And there's if you can build that toolkit, because what we know is when someone's at risk of suicide, they've exhausted everything they've ever tried before and it's not working, and they see the only way to get out of the pain is to die because that pain is so heavy. Most folks who are suicidal don't want to die, they just want that pain to go away. And then being able to talk to trusted adults. So we know if students have one person in the community or home and one person in school, that is a lifeline to be able to get the help that they need. Next slide. How can you support your child? I'm going to give you a minute just to read this slide. And I want you to think of one thing that you kind of like, oh, that's something I want to check out. Like for me, it's a screen-free or screen-light family culture. Just recently, we had a screen-free day nationally. Our screens actually change our neurological structures. UCLA did a study and showed when we went off screens for 12 weeks, the brain literally patched holes it was developing just from a screen exposure. Does anybody see something up here that kind of resonates with you or something you kind of want to know more about?
Teaching children how to resolve conflict peacefully with peers.
Yes.
I think because maybe as a parent we don't teach our children how to do that because maybe we didn't have to, we didn't encounter this, or we resolved it in a different way.
Sure.
So as a parent, teaching our children how to do not only that but other things,
right,
doesn't necessarily, might not be the same.
So maybe also learning ourselves, right?
Right.
In my family, you didn't talk about things that you were upset about. You would talk to someone else. You wouldn't talk directly saying, hey, you know what? This happened and here's how it made me feel. And just learning how to do something as simple as that, we just let conflict go away and just pretended it wasn't there, right? Other people might act out or yell or scream or whatever. But yeah, I love that. Like how we're going to have conflict. And how do we have the agency to connect with other person and say, you know what? Rather than doing a you message, saying, here's what happened. Here's kind of how it made me feel or how it impacted me. And the other person can be like, wow, I didn't realize that. So being able to own it, saying that was not my intention. I apologize. That came across that way. Let's revisit it. So those little tiny skills kind of connects that humanity piece, right? Thank you. Next slide. So we're going to do a little breathing activity. I'm going to ask you to sit with your back up against your chair, your feet planted on your seat. This is called the 4-7-8 breathing. right now, because I'm talking, I'm a little nervous and I was a little frantic with the technology piece. My breathing is real short. You can probably hear I'm trying to grab and ask for breath when I'm talking. And so I'm at a heightened level. So I'm going to do this with you. So what we're going to do, and then I'll tell you first, and we could do it together. You're going to inhale for 4 counts, and then you're going to hold it for 7 counts, and then you're going to exhale for 8. Because right now I'm just breathing like this. I'm not breathing like this. So let's breathe in for 4. Hold for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then breathe out for 8. Let's do that one more time. And out. Do it one more time. Hold. Breathe out. Thank you for doing that with me. That helped me. It will actually, breath is like a nice warm blanket around the middle of your brain called the amygdala, and that's where all of our emotions are. So when we get angry or upset or have real strong emotions, our frontal lobe, where our critical thinking and problem solving is located, it's deactivated. So we call it flipping the lid. So then the inside of your brain's taken over. So when someone's in a heightened state of alert, they can't think. And so they need breath. So if you come across someone or yourself and you're struggling, just stop, sit down, and breathe. And be able to hold more breath and get the feelings out. And it will literally calm your whole nervous system. Students who are having anxiety attack, this is what we do. Sometimes I have to, be very loud, just go, and then just help them. To be honest, I have to do it with my dog. My dog sometimes has anxiety, so I just hold her and I just breathe with her, and you get to see her too. Oh, okay, Mom, this feels good. You guys are probably that lady does what with her dog? Next slide. So what can we do when someone is at risk? And it's having that trusted adult. Students feel safe in school. I know it's been crazy with COVID, but the number one thing I'm hearing from students is I wanted to be back in school. This is our typical routine. I want to be with my friends. I need to be in a normalized routine, and being at home was not really the typical of what we've experienced in life. And then extracurricular activity. So participating in any type of club or playing music or anything, doesn't have to be school related, it could be out in the community, maybe doing something with your faith-based community, something that makes you have a sense of purpose. These are the 3 top ways to feel connected. We all want to feel like we know someone, we're seen and we're heard, right? And we have someone that we can have a relationship with. We're social beings. Next slide. So what can we do? And we teach students this same process. It has a little bit different words, but to know the signs when someone's really at risk of possible suicide, being able to find the words to talk to them about it, and then connecting them with resources. Next slide. Thanks. So there's 3 things about the signs when someone may be at risk of suicide. That's protective factors, the things that help protect you, like coping strategies, having strong relationships. We'll go into that a little bit more. Risk factors, maybe someone you know or a family member has died by suicide. That could be a risk factor, or you have some other issues going on. And then warning signs. The warning signs are that light on your dashboard saying, right now there's an issue, you need to pull over, right? Next slide. So the sense of feeling connected and the sense of hope is huge. If we build hope, and hope is larger than pain, then we're saving someone and having an alternative to thinking about suicide. Next slide. Risk factors. These are things that could put you at risk. That does not mean you are going to be suicidal. It's just something to consider. So the hopelessness is huge. When I have nothing to live for and I don't feel connected, then that could put you at risk. Access to firearms. There is a colleague of mine presenting on access to firearms right now. Any student, I'm the crisis responder in our district. I lead all the psychologists and counselors in this work. And students who've died, many have died by firearms in the home. And I'm not here to say you shouldn't have firearms in the home, but typically they've been in a locked safe and the students know the code. And so there are safety locks you can put on it, but just being mindful of not having access to something. So someone could be in dire need to be suicidal, but if they don't have access to means, then that's another protective, intervention. Next slide. Warning signs. This is when you really need to pay attention and check in with your child or with your friend or family member or community member when they make threats and say, oh, the world would be better off without me. Or, I have nothing to live for. Or no one would notice if I was gone. It could be direct or indirect. But the biggest one is significant changes. When you see someone and they're typically outgoing, now they're quiet. Or they're typically quiet, now they're outgoing. Many times people describe that they see the person be very happy and they have everything, all their life put together. It's because they had a plan to make sure everything was taken care of and they have that relief that, okay, I got things taken care of, and then they may die by suicide. It doesn't make sense, right? But you might hear them saying, oh, I want to give you my favorite jacket. I want to give you my favorite piece of jewelry. They start giving away things. Or you might see searches on the internet that may be related to death and dying and or violence. We train all of our staff, students, and parents in all of this. So how do I even figure out how to talk to someone? Has anyone here talked to someone about suicide before? Thank you. It's hard to say that. I work with suicide all the time, and saying that word out loud is hard. I teach at the graduate level at San Diego State as well, and invariably, everyone has a hard word like, oh, you want to hurt yourself? No. Are we talking about suicide? We need to use that word, and it helps take the power away from it. Because there's this myth that if we don't talk about it, it's not going to happen. Or if we talk about it, we're going to give that thought to someone. It's the actual opposite. When I lean into someone who's suicidal and say, hey, it sounds like maybe we're talking about suicide, you'll see a sense of relief that, oh, you're someone I can talk to about this. And it doesn't have to be that stigma or that secret that we just don't talk about. So the first thing could be just saying, hey, everything okay? Or, I've noticed lately you've been really talking about being overwhelmed, I wonder what's going on. Or sometimes when people feel like this, they're thinking about suicide. Is that something you're thinking about? Well, I've thought about it. I don't want to do it because of this, this, and this, but being able to actually talk directly about it could save a life. And it's not about a psychologist who can do that. It's about students, parents, aunts, uncles, community members. Everyone should be able to have a conversation with anyone about suicide. Okay, so now I have the answer. Yes, they are thinking about suicide. So the first thing is stay calm. Because I will tell you, it's overwhelming. I've done it many times, and to hear someone say, yes, I'm thinking about suicide, I'm like, and I've done it so much, I'm like, oh no, what do I do now, right? So that's just a normal feeling. So just be aware of your own, maybe just use the 4-8-7 breathing, and just go, okay, and just be there. Sometimes just sitting and being present with someone, talking about suicide, and giving them all the reasons. Our tendency is to lean in and say, oh, you have so much to live for. Why would you want to do that, right? I'm going to ask you to do the opposite. Tell me more. Sounds like you're in a lot of pain. Tell me more about this. Tell me why you want to die. And what it does is it changes the vernacular, because when you say, oh, you have so much to live for, you're not validating that person. That's how they're feeling at the time. Tell me why, what's going on? Tell me about the pain. That must be really challenging. When they can talk about it, they didn't have the words before, you're giving them a safe space to be able to have that conversation. And then make sure to supervise them at all times. Like in schools, we don't want someone sending a student from the classroom up to the office because they might not make it, right? So we have systems to make sure that we can connect that student to someone who can have a conversation and keep them safe. And then we'll be connecting with you as parents as well, and then connect them with resources because there's a need. It might be a medication issue. It might be a loss of a relationship. It could be any stressor that maybe we can help connect with them. Has anyone heard about this phone number, 988? The neat thing is California has been the leading state when it comes to having suicide prevention efforts. So on the back of every student and staff ID are all the phone numbers for the Access and Crisis Line. This is the new one federally. In 2017, they passed a law that by this July, every phone carrier has to be able to have this access the crisis line. which is really cool. Think about it. It's something we've been working on for a long time. I was not responsible for it, but we have all these phone numbers and text lines. But who's going to remember those? Who's going to wear their badge all the time, right? Or have their student ID with them? But now 988 is someone you can call. I use that line. After I'm responding to someone who dies by suicide, it's a pretty heavy toll. My number one strength is empathy, so I take on others' feelings sometimes. So I'll call just to debrief, so I don't have to come home to my husband and tell him everything and give him all of that worry, right? So if you are having a bad day and you just need to talk to someone, you can call that line. If you're worried about someone who has a mental health need and they're in crisis or a drug need or they're suicidal, call that line. Something that just happened this year is we have what's called a mobile crisis response team. Typically in the schools, if someone is at risk and we screen them and we need to transport them, we'll have PERT team, which is law enforcement, who will bring the child to the emergency screening unit to kind of get help. But that can be a little bit difficult, right? Because you're thinking police officer, I'm in trouble, and then you're kind of combining it. Don't get me wrong, they are wonderful, and they've done a really great job, and we partner with our PERT team, and they are just so well trained and how to connect with the human element and help someone feel safe. But we now have, through this line, and all of you can access it, we can as educators, but they'll respond to you or a community member, and they'll have mental health providers come out and intervene and provide support and resources and do ongoing monitoring till that person's back to baseline and being safe. Isn't that cool? Because I'll tell you right now, the amount of mental health needs supersedes any amount of counseling or therapists or supports that we can provide right now worldwide, just because we're all going through some tough times. So great resource for all of you. Next slide. These are just some handouts that may or may not be helpful for you. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. There's something called Mind Out Loud. And in March, it's a student-led conference that was virtual, and it started in the state of California. We have one student rep from our district who's on that council, and it ended up going worldwide. They have different actors and athletes and pop stars and rappers who are part of it. So it's led and developed by students, for students. So these are some of the activities or resources they provided. What I really like about the left side, even though I just told you about the 988, it might be I want to talk to someone and maybe it's a peer, so they have warm lines, or maybe it's, I might be transgender or non-binary or part of the LGBTQI community. And we know the youth over the last pandemic few years have risen suicide rates 4 times any other population. So the Trevor line is a great place for being able to connect with our community. And then these are just some tips for teens: finding a calm in the chaos, maintaining daily routine. When we had our children, we wanted to get them on a routine, right? They eat at a certain time, go to bed at a certain time, and all of our bodies are wired that way. You start walking with someone, you end up walking in the same pace as them. You watch it next time you walk with someone. All of a sudden, your left foot's going out at the same time. So you'll start out of sync and then you'll go into sync eventually. So having routines is something that helps our body have a sense of control and a sense of grounding. And then balance time for yourself. I would say that's something I'm working on. I'm so passionate about this work that I sometimes work too much. And my husband's like, you need to be home more. So being able to just have that time with your loved ones or just by yourself to have some time to reflect and get grounded. And then being able to treat yourself with compassion. Sometimes we are very compassionate with others, but maybe we're not as much with ourselves, right? Next slide. Oh, and there's a bunch of apps on the bottom too. Next slide. Okay, so there's something called grounding techniques. Has anyone heard of that before? So I've worked in residential facilities with kids who've had very dramatic, intense outbursts and, in a lot of different ways. And so when you get escalated, I don't know if you've ever seen someone get really mad and they're just seeing red, basically. This is a great way to connect. And it's reconnecting our senses, because remember I told you about, when we're overwhelmed and we're emotional, maybe we're having an outburst, we can't think anymore. So people say, calm down. You never want to tell someone who's upset to calm down, because if they could calm down, they would. Has anyone told you, calm down? It's like, no, it's
all
okay.
the time.
But it's okay to be upset. Any emotion is okay, but it's just a matter of, okay, do I need help to get reconnected, regrounded? And so how do I re-engage my senses? How do I get my brain to get back together so I can start thinking and problem solving? So it could be just, okay, breathe. You can just have someone just say, okay, let's breathe. Or if you don't want to tell them what to do, just do it yourself, and naturally they'll start breathing with you if you do that, 4, 8, 7. But what's one thing that you see right now? I've had students who have had catatonic states where trauma triggers, they just froze and they couldn't move. And so I would have them just blink. Okay, is there 2 things you can see right now? And they'll blink and let me know. Okay, I want you to feel, what is one thing you feel right now? Okay, I can feel, like they could think that my pants are rubbing, or maybe my shoe is not feeling well, or, or I'm feeling the sand in my feet, whatever that feeling is. What's one thing that you're hearing right now? I can hear some people outside. I can hear someone tapping their foot. There might be an intercom or walkie or something. And then what's something that you taste right now? My mouth is kind of dry right now. Usually when we're stressed, our body naturally dehydrates. So this is one way just to get someone reconnected. It's amazing. It sounds really simple, doesn't it? But this has helped so many students I've worked with who have been in a really distressed state to just get grounded and just think, feel, and connect. And it brings them to the current present. These are some different resources. A lot of what you saw today comes out of Know the Signs and Each of Mine Matters. Those are California-based suicide mental health awareness agencies. That National Crisis Text Line and the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, that's now turning to 988, but these still are activated as well. And then these are just some apps that students can utilize. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to have you just reflect for a minute. What is one well-being goal I have for myself, let's say for this month? What's one thing I want to do? And turn to a partner, it could be someone you know, and just share with them, what's one thing I want to do that I want to do to take care of myself today? So go ahead and turn to a partner. Next slide.
I want to go on a run today. At some point today. I haven't ran in a while. I like to get my mind off. Something different. So I was like, yeah.
Those of you who are watching us from home, I hope that you can maybe just reflect and write down one thing you're going to do for your own well-being.
See the mountains.
What are you going to do to take care of yourself? What's one goal you have?
I like to eat.
Eat. What do you like to eat? I've never had sushi.
I like the desert.
Is it? My husband loves sushi.
So that brings me back, to that ground.
Remind like almost like
There's a nice desert.
what's that word? Nostalgic.
Yeah,
That's almost nostalgic.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's one thing that I hope to do today. And I think you mentioned, it's kind of setting and leading kind of the experience, right? So maybe at some point I can convince my son to go on a run with me.
What's stopping you?
Oh, yeah. To catch the bus, huh? How long is that really?
If we could.
2 minutes? Ah.
But every day.
Hey, but every day counts, right? How many miles you run a year, right? For those 2 minutes before and after.
So I want to thank all of you. I'm hearing some amazing conversations and I can see you smiling and engaging. So it sounds like you had some great time to connect. Thank you for being so graceful and patient with me as I was struggling a little bit with the computer and had the wrong presentation on. Hopefully the next one goes better, but would anyone like to share something that they're planning to do around their well-being for this month? Don't feel like you have to, but if you want to share out loud.
want to run more
Nice.
and maybe invite my family to join me, but they're not, right now, they're not down for it.
Yeah, they're not there yet. Good. I encourage you to keep inviting them. I know,
Yes.
I just had knee surgery recently, and so I'm usually exercising. I haven't been able to, and so I'm now doing some stationary biking every morning. You know, just usually I go from 0 to 1,000, so I'm trying to just titrate up a little bit at a time and stuff, and then hopefully get back on my bike. So,
Very nice.
any questions or comments, concerns, clarifications?
Do you have those like flyers that you mentioned?
Thank you for reminding me. Yes. Can you grab that bag for me? And if we can give a round of applause to Heather Meese, who's been our wonderful helper today. Whoops. If you want to pass those around. These are some stress relievers, just some ideas. And then this is the Mind Out Loud. There's English and Spanish. Does anyone want a handout in Spanish?
Pass them on.
Okay, here, let's do the English ones. I don't have any of the Spanish. Does anyone want Spanish or is English okay? Yeah? Okay. Yes.
I'm good.
No?
Yeah.
All right, well, this is the end of this session, and